Hello everyone, Hyper here, and welcome to the 8.0 pre-patch guide for the Unholy DK and the Frost DK. I won't make a separate video for each one because for the pre-patch, I just wanted to give you a quick rundown of what builds you should be using just to get you started for both of those specs. I won't go into too much detail why one build is better than the other build, but I will tell you which one I found to be best, and these are so far just tested on dummies and on Simcraft. I have not had a chance yet to actually take them into raiding, so anything I say, please take with a grain of salt. Also, some things might get changed over the next few days or next few weeks going into BFA, so keep that in mind as well. If you logged in the pre-patch and have no idea what's going on, this guide will get you started with everything you need to know. First up, let's talk about the Frost DK. And for this build, in Tier 1, we will be using Cold Heart, in Tier 2, Runic Attenuation, or you can go with Murderous Efficiency. The difference between the two is very tiny. And then in Tier 3, you can just take whatever. Tier 4, here again, you can either take Frostbite or Frozen Pulse for single target. Frozen Pulse takes much less management, and if you're not looking to min-max to the extreme, then I would just recommend you go with that. If you're looking at a little bit of min-maxing and switching up your gameplay a little bit, then take Frostbite. Then in Tier 5, it doesn't matter. Tier 6, I recommend taking Gathering Storm, and then Tier 7, we take Breath of Sindragosa. So to complement this build, for legendaries, we use the Cold Heart legendary because it synergizes well with our Tier 1 talent. Their recharge time is the exact same, so whenever we press our Chains of Ice, we are going to essentially get a double Cold Heart hit. And then we just take the bracers for the extra frost damage. As far as stats go, I can't really give you a concrete breakdown because depending on how many stats you have, your weights might be different. Overall, strength seems to be the best on single target, so you want to prioritize eye level over secondary stats, and then just go with crit verse because haste and mastery lost a lot of value because, especially on single target, with haste, if you use Frostbite, you don't really need all that much haste. You rather want to stack crit because those crit Frostbites are going to be doing a lot more damage. As far as trinkets go for single target, I recommend going with the Pantheon trinket if you have them maxed out, and the Seeping Scourgewing. And these two together should be the best combo out of all the trinkets as long as you have them at high enough eye level. The opener and rotation with Frostbite is a little bit more complicated, but if you take Frozen Pulse, this simplifies it down a lot. So with Frostbite, you go in with Remorseless Winter, then you get 2 or 3 Obliterates in. This will depend on how much priority you want to put on your Breath of Sindragosa. If you want to be at higher runic power, then you get 3. If you're okay with sitting at a little lower and your BOS being shorter, then you just go in at 2. So after that, you Pillar of Frost and you use up your Chains proc, so Cold Heart proc from your talent and your chest. And then after that, if you get KM procs because your BOS is rolling, you use those KM procs on Frostbite. And if you don't have KM procs up, then you want to Obliterate because that will give you more runic power. After your BOS is over, whenever you get a KM proc, you always want to use Frostbite on it because that is going to be doing the 4 times crit damage. And if you don't have KM procs and you have runes, then you use them on Obliterate. Outside of that, just make sure you use up your Ram procs and your Frost Strike as you gain more RP. If you staggered your Cold Heart correctly and used it after using Pillar of Frost, that means that when your next Pillar of Frost comes up, your Cold Heart will be stacked back to 20. So again, you want to Pillar of Frost and press that Cold Heart. From there on, you pretty much just want to keep your rotation going, and once your BOS is almost off cooldown, you want to start setting up for it again. Then going over to AoE, here you really have the choice between 2 builds. You can either go with the regular Breath of Sindragosa build, which I assume will be what you will take in raids because you want to prioritize more single target damage even if there are adds. However, for dungeons, for example, I assume the second build will be a little bit more useful where you take Cold Heart, Runic Attenuation, or Murderous Efficiency. Again, the choice between the two is up to you. And then you can either take Asphyxiate or the Grip reset cooldown. Then you take Frostbite, Permafrost, Glacial Advance, and Obliteration. With this build, you will still want to use the chest and the bracer legendary. However, when it comes to trinkets, you should switch up from Pantheon and Seeping to Pantheon and Shadow Singed Fang. And here, your stat priorities will also change a little bit, and Mastery and Haste will be much more beneficial. and strength will kind of be in between the two. And again, this depends on your stats. If you have much more of one stat than the other, then your stat weights will completely change. So I definitely recommend simming your stats to see what you should be stacking. For AoE, your rotation will be fairly simple if you go with the Obliteration build. You essentially want to build up some runic power so you can get your Pillar of Frost started. But right before you Pillar of Frost, you will want to empower Rune Weapon, then cast Pillar of Frost. And this will make sure that you have enough runic power and runes to just keep chaining your abilities together. Once you pop Pillar of Frost, you want to Glacial Advance and then go into Frostbite and weave that with Frost Strikes or Howling Blast Rhyme procs that you get. So overall, it plays very similar to the current Frost DK, and you just want to weave those abilities. The only difference is that now your Glacial Advance will also proc your guaranteed Killing Machine proc on your Frostbite. Next, moving on to Unholy. Looking at the single target build, in tier 1 we take Clawing Shadows. All will serve is basically the same amount of DPS on single target, but if you have to cleave or you have to move out of range at times, then Clawing Shadows is definitely better. In the second row we take Ebon Fever. Third row, it doesn't matter, it's a utility row. Row 4, here I recommend taking Soul Reaper. Even if you don't get the benefit of the 8-second haste, it is better on single target. Then in row 5, it doesn't matter again. Row 6, I suggest taking Defile. However, Pestilence might be a slight DPS gain for you. This will kind of come down to how your stats are set up. And then in the last row, we take Unholy Frenzy. For legendaries and trinkets, I suggest using Cold Heart and Cephus, and then for trinkets, Seeping Scourgewing with the Pantheon trinket. Also for Unholy, if you happen to have a Mythic Scythe that drops from Argus, then you might want to check out the eye level on it and see if it's better than your weapon, because it does give haste mastery. For example, on my character, my Apocalypse weapon is 2 item levels higher than my Argus Scythe. However, the Scythe gives me better stats, so I'm using that instead of my artifact weapon. The opener on Unholy is fairly simple. You will pop Army at about 7 seconds on the pull, and right before you run in, you press Dark Transformation, and as you run in, you Outbreak, and get 2 Festering Strikes in, after which you want to Unholy Frenzy, Soul Reaper, and Apocalypse. And then after this, you drop your Defile, and you just build with Festering Strike, and spend with Clawing Shadows, and then obviously your runic power, you spend it with Death Coil. Whenever you get your first Fallen Crusader proc, I recommend using your Chains of Ice to spend those Cold Heart stacks, or if you just want to kind of press it as you run in, you can do that, because you don't really gain a benefit from sitting on it for too long. For AoE, and by AoE I mean 5 or more targets, your build will change a little bit, but not too significantly. For raids, I still recommend going with the single target build because it does offer pretty decent cleave damage, but if you're doing dungeons, you might want to consider this second build. In tier 1, we take Infected Claws, tier 2, Bursting Swords, tier 3 doesn't really matter. Tier 4, you can either go with Soul Reaper or Pestilent Pustules. They are about the same damage-wise and output-wise, but Soul Reaper obviously takes some active management, while Pestilent Pustules is just passive. Tier 5 doesn't matter, and then in tier 6 you take Epidemic, and in tier 7 Unholy Frenzy. And as far as trinkets and Legos go, you still use the same legendaries. However, for trinket, again you swap from Seeping Scourgewing over to Shadow Singed Fang. This build plays the exact same as in Legion, where you want to get your Outbreak out on everything, and then you want to stack up Festering Wounds on a target, Defile, and Cleave to everything around it. But the only thing that really changes is that your Runic Power Spender, instead of being Death Coil, will be Epidemic. For Death Coil, you still just want to use those Sudden Doom procs on your priority target whenever you get them, but outside of Sudden Doom, you don't want to Death Coil on AoE because you gain much more damage from pressing Epidemic. Last thing I wanted to mention is consumables. Currently, there is a potion called Potion of Mogu Power, which will give you 377 strength for 25 seconds. I'm sure this will get fixed in the future, but for now, this is the potion to go for. If this gets hotfixed, you will just switch back to Prolonged Power. For the question of which spec is better, Frost or Unholy, I'm not going to give you an answer. Both of these are very good and are very close in damage when it comes to single target. I haven't had a chance to try them out in AoE situations and on bosses where ads spawn. I'm sure one of them will pull ahead slightly, but this is a pre-patch. Everything is broken, half the things don't work, other things don't make sense. Just have fun, play whatever build you like, and wait for BFA to launch. Thank you so much for watching this video, and if you enjoyed it, please hit the like button and sub to the channel. Also, if you'd like to support me directly, then you can check out my Patreon, which is linked in the description box. You will get perks such as joining my Discord, or submitting a question to my monthly AMA, or having your name mentioned in the description box. Thank you for watching, and I will see you on the next one.